What trouble, ma'am? What seems to be the problem here?
Street 501, 1450. Street 302 is on the call. Team 50.
Meet Joe Batten, internationally known authority on management and supervision, author of the all-time best-selling book, Tough-Minded Management. Mr. Batten has applied his tested principles of supervision to police work, advising police departments, law enforcement organizations, professional groups, and government agencies.
A police sergeant's job calls for a unique kind of supervision. Unlike the industrial plant foreman, who is within shouting distance of the men he directs, the police sergeant may be miles away from the men in his command. A police sergeant cannot simply glance across the room, check the effectiveness of the work being done. He may not see an error being made. He may not be on hand to repeat instructions, or even know that the men are on the job all the time. Police sergeants are also unique in the type of men they supervise. For sergeants direct men who are, in a way, supervisors themselves. A patrolman enforces the law in his sector. The people in his area, in a very real sense, are under his direction. Good patrolmen are also independent thinkers. They must be able to act quickly, without direction, when the need arises. And so the very qualities of independence and leadership that makes good patrolmen may at the same time make the sergeant's job of supervising quite different and tougher than that of a plant foreman. Today's police sergeant must be equipped with supervisory skills and a method that gets things done. He must know what the department wants, know where he's going, and must lead his men. He uses judgment, courage, integrity, warmth, and compassion in dealing with his subordinates. I call this method tough-minded supervision. Does the label tough-mindedness startle you? Let's get it straight. Don't confuse tough-mindedness with hard-headedness. Tough is not the same as hard. This rock is hard, rigid, unyielding. If I strike it a sudden blow, it may shatter. This leather ball glove is tough. It's flexible. It's durable. If I strike it, it can take the blow. A hard mind, you see, is like the rock, rigid and unbending. It can't contend with problems and blows that occur on a law enforcement job. A tough mind has a built-in flexibility. It is firm but fair. It is a positive listener. It builds on strengths. It has high expectations. It develops people. These are some of the basic rules of tough-mindedness. Now let's see them applied to police supervision. What do you think of this, Sergeant?
One gate. Street 501, 1450.
Good night, Sergeant.
Street 302 is on the call.
Now, Tom, before you take off, I want you to rewrite these reports. They're all wrong.
Four reports? You want me to do 4 reports over again? Now?
Yeah, they're no good, Tom. They're full of holes.
107, incident number.
I never had this many reports turned back from Sergeant Yates. Yeah, I'm not a writer, I'm a cop.
Well, if it's up to me, you're going to be a damn good cop. Now, do them over now.
1451, 500, that should all be in.
Oh, come on, Sarge. I promised I'd take my wife out tonight. Now, it's going to take a half hour to do this paperwork over. Look, how about let me fix them up tomorrow, okay?
No, do them now. I have to take them upstairs tonight.
You know, Sarge, you've only had this job, what, about 2 weeks? What, are you trying to prove something?
You're going to do those reports over again. And you are going to do them right.
Hold it, that's not right. The next time you find yourself pointing the finger at someone else, take a look at your hand. One finger points toward the other guy, but 3 of them point back at you. Ask yourself what you've done to contribute to this situation. What could you have done to prevent it? The sergeant needs to do several things. First, he must communicate why the reports are not acceptable as they are. Up to now, he's only ordered Tom to do them over. Second, he must build on one of the man's strengths, his known ability as an investigator. And third, he must show the man he isn't doing justice to himself when he doesn't report in full the investigation he has made. Let's see how this situation should be handled.
Tom, let me explain what I mean. Pull up a chair. Now, there's just too many blank spaces here. Information that's important is missing. Now, take this one. You need to list suspects on this person action.
Well, there weren't any, see?
Well, let's see. 1300, 9th and Grand. No suspects. All right, any witnesses?
Yeah, there were a couple of... In fact, I've listed them right down here, 2 of them. And they think they know what the guy looks like when I talk to them. And, in fact, they think he even works around that area.
Well, then you've done some investigating, huh?
Oh, I sure did.
But this report doesn't show that. See? Now, take this one. There isn't enough narrative written on the stolen car case. Do you have any idea of the circumstances surrounding it?
I know that the family dropped a set of keys in the parking lot.
Well, then you know more than you've written here. So you've done some investigating you're not taking credit for. How about this one? There's just too many empty blanks on this one. There's more empty than filled. These should be completed, Tom.
Well, but see, these didn't apply. And Sergeant Yates knew that when we just left them blank like that, they didn't apply.
The manual instructs us to write N.A. If the space is not applicable, we write in N.A. It's very important to answer all the questions, Tom. Then your job is done right. So anybody can pick up this report and know exactly what happened. Now, fill all the blanks in. All right? I just figured you had skipped the questions when you didn't answer them and fill in the spaces. Now, you've done some good investigating, and you did consider all the questions. Make your reports reflect the work you do. It's all part of being a good police officer. Okay, Tom?
All right.
Okay.
Thanks, Sarge.
All right.
Sergeant Turner has just applied a tough-minded principle. Build on strengths, don't focus on weaknesses. The sergeant was correct in telling the patrolman to rewrite his reports. Tom had done a sloppy job of handling his paperwork, but the sergeant should have been specific in the very beginning in telling Tom what was wrong with the reports and why Sergeant Turner didn't communicate anything in the beginning of that little confrontation other than the fact that he was ordering Tom to write the reports over. He focused on the patrolman's weakness. That's poor reporting. He didn't tell him why it was important to fill out the reports properly or how to improve his work. And it takes no brains, no guts, to simply dwell on the weakness of another officer, especially if you have the rank on him. But it does take brains, and it does take guts to turn the situation into an opportunity to build the man. By focusing on the strength of the patrolman, his ability as an investigator, the sergeant can build into his men the pride to report a capable job of investigating. If the sergeant continued to simply hammer on the man's weakness, poor reporting, the chances are good that this is just what he'd continue to get from the guy. The sergeant would also beat down and help to destroy the patrolman's self-confidence. To build a strong patrolman, you see, so that his weaknesses can gradually be eliminated, it's essential that you constantly look for and build on his present and potential strengths. Like many of us, Sergeant Turner has trouble communicating. For communicating isn't all talk. Sometimes it's listening, positive listening. That means not merely thinking of what is to be your reply or waiting until the other man gets through talking. Positive listening means listening not only with your ears and your mind and your heart, but with your eyes, optic listening. In determining the true feelings of another person, nonverbal body communication, the eyes, the head, the hands, are far more reliable than what is said. The science of body communication we call kinesics. As police officers, you know that the lie detection courses offered by law enforcement agencies put much more importance on the conflict between spoken testimony and body communication. Whenever there's a conflict, the officer is urged to put greater significance on nonverbal communication. For body communication is the language of the subconscious, and try as hard as it can, our subconscious cannot lie. Let's watch body communication contradict the spoken words of Sergeant Turner.
Oh, hiya, Bill. What's on your mind?
Oh, that's okay. I'll wait until you're done with that.
It's all right. Go ahead. I'm listening.
Well, it's about my partner, Tony Mortillo. Maybe I better come back later.
It's all right, Bill. Sit down. If it's important, go ahead.
Well, Tony, He's been acting kind of funny lately.
Funny? What do you mean funny? Is he sleeping in the car? Is he not doing his job? What?
Well, I don't know. The other day we had a traffic problem at 73rd and Walnut. Well, he just quit before we got the cars cleared out. I mean, the area was congested and all, but he just insisted upon quitting. I had the feeling that he couldn't take anymore, so I didn't argue.
You know better, Bill. Now, you tell your partner we don't quit assignments.
Well, Sergeant, there's more to him than that. I mean, he's been a good partner till just lately.
Well, we all have days when something is bugging us, right? Okay, Bill, thanks for stopping by. And keep the traffic moving.
A lot of nonverbal communication went on between Sergeant Turner and Bill. Unfortunately, Bill's kinesics were ignored by Sergeant Turner, but Sergeant Turner's kinesics were very much picked up by the patrolman. The patrolman's physical actions should have told the sergeant that he was worried about his partner and that it was important to him to talk about it. You see, if Sergeant Turner had listened positively with his eyes, he would have noticed the patrolman's nervous hesitancy in opening the subject. He'd have seen the patrolman brace his spinal column, shift his feet. See, Bill was concerned about his partner. He wasn't trying to be a fink. He wanted the sergeant to know what was bothering his partner and help him if he could. The patrolman did listen with his eyes and was strongly affected by what he saw. He saw a sergeant preoccupied with other business, a sergeant who said he was listening, but whose physical actions said he was not. Be a positive listener. Look at your men when they talk. When you ignore nonverbal messages, you are neglecting one of the basic means of communication. Don't put this needless communication on yourself. Be a positive listener. A sergeant is part of management, not just one of the boys. A sergeant is a vital link between administration, which develops plans and operating orders, and his subordinates, the patrolmen, who actually carry them out. The sergeant has responsibilities to both groups. A police sergeant cannot hope to have this program carried through effectively unless the underlying purpose and means of getting it done are clearly understood from the top of the organization to the level of execution. Our sergeant must understand what is being done and why it is being done as it is, and he must interpret this to his men. The officer who doesn't understand the purpose and nature of a plan usually doesn't support it, opening the way for failure. Now, every sergeant should help his men know the goal and know their role.
They see you, and that's the police department, see? Now, before we leave, I want to talk about those name plates that are supposed to appear on the sides of your car on the fender. Now, the chief is trying something new. He wants every policeman to be known by his name in the area where he works. Now, I've noticed that those plates are often missing on the cars in my district. Now, how do you explain that?
We just forget to put them on, Sarge.
No, and for a good reason. You know, I don't think that deal's working out too well with my home life. Now, really, my wife got a call from some kid up there. He just probably read the name on the side of the car and heads right for the phone and calls my wife.
Well, that's to be expected, especially in the beginning, you know, when the people see the name plates for the first time. But the order is, name plates are to appear on the squad cars of the officers on duty. Chief believes that if you're known by your name in the sector where you work, you're more than just a cop. You're a person. You're not just an anonymous uniform. So keep those nameplates visible. And keep me informed on how the plates work out. The positive effects along with the gripes. And I'll pass the word along upstairs. Now, let's talk about those days off for next week, right?
The sergeant is concerned with the accomplishment of departmental objectives. He candidly communicates those objectives to the various levels of command. He owes it to the organization to be alert to the effectiveness of the plan in working it out so that adjustments can be made to meet unforeseen conditions and changing needs. The only reason a patrolman receives a paycheck is for the accomplishment of objectives. Remember, words like goal and objective simply mean what you want to get done. A tough-minded sergeant knows each of the men on his team. He knows that each must be viewed as a whole man. A patrolman is a policeman 24 hours a day, and it's the whole man who comes to work as a patrolman, and it is the whole man who goes home. A man has values, attitudes, and sometimes problems that he can't deposit when he leaves his house. In knowing the whole man, the sergeant must recognize a patrolman's full potential, his strengths. He knows the man's lifestyle, knows of family difficulties or financial pressures. A patrolman is a highly visible member of society. What he is, what he does, what his attitudes are will affect the way the public sees the entire department. Patrolman's job puts complex demands on him. He endures long periods of routine patrol, yet he must react quickly and effectively to problem situations. He faces divergent personal contact, victims of crimes, criminals, informers, businessmen, school officials, residents in his district. He must act effectively in a wide range of contacts. He tolerates stress in a multitude of ways. He experiences extreme and rapid changes of emotions as he goes from a traffic problem to murder, from meeting a mob to finding a lost child. Who does that patrolman turn to for support in helping him cope with these demands? The sergeant. A tough-minded sergeant, you see, can help his subordinates put the situation in true perspective and get rid of frustrations and solve his own problems with a tool we've mentioned before, positive listening. Many times, just by being an attentive, positive listener, you can provide the outlet an officer needs so that he can figure things out for himself in a rational way. A person's behavior on and off the job should reflect the same set of values and attitudes. Just helping a man to know himself through listening and a bit of thoughtful questioning will give him a solid base for working things out for himself, preventing him from becoming a fragmented person, playing many roles in which he tries to be everything to everyone. So know the whole man and help him to know himself. To do this, it is essential that the sergeant know his own attitudes, his own motives, and his own drives.
Tony's off again tonight. Second time in a week. That's just not like Tony. Hey, that's what Bill said today in the office. He was trying to tell me something. What? He sure was fidgety. Man, I was so busy with my paperwork, I just didn't give him the attention he needed. Bill's working alone tonight. I think I'll collect his reports and have a little talk with him. Coffee, Bill?
Yeah, thanks.
Everything okay tonight?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. I see Officer Mortillo is off again tonight. Second time this week. You got any idea why?
No, sir.
Now, Bill, I know that he's your friend. I know you've been worried. After all, he's your partner. You're both very good officers. You work well together. You got a right to be concerned.
Yeah, I got a feeling something's wrong. Yesterday, he backed out of a fight we had to break up. I found myself going it alone.
Is that right? Backed out, huh?
Well, not at first. I mean, he got into it, but then he just sort of gave up. He even apologized afterwards.
How long has he been like this?
I don't know. Maybe 10 days.
Okay. Don't let this bug you. I don't want the situation to worry you. You've shown your responsibility by your concern. Now, it's my job to check into it. I'll see what I can do. Thanks for the report.
Thanks for the coffee.
When a patrolman acts differently than is usual for him, the sergeant needs to find the reason. Sergeant Turner had two men who were not themselves. Bill's difficulty was obvious. He was anxious about his partner and friend. The sergeant set Bill's mind at ease when he allowed the patrolman to talk about his concern, really listening to the man this time. The problem with patrolman Mortillo was not as easy. Up to now, Tony was a dedicated patrolman. Now he's taking time off without reasonable explanation. He's quitting assignments before completion, holds back in assisting his partner. A physical cause could account for Tony's behavior. Tony's been kind of out of gear for about 10 days. What happened 10 days ago? An argument? Could Tony have been injured and not reported it? There may be other reasons. A touch of arthritis, an ulcer, a psychological problem. For the sake of the patrolman and the department, the reason must be found. Check the activity logs. Have a talk with Tony. A sergeant's job is to make sure his men's abilities are fully used. The full abilities of a sick or injured man are not properly used on assignments that require endurance or strength. That's why we need to know the whole man. Knowing the whole man includes knowing his potential, what a man is capable of achieving. Now, most people don't realize their possibilities, don't know how much they can grow. Each individual needs to know the results by which he will be judged, and he needs standards that give him stretch. Having high expectations for a man is the way to help him stretch, to achieve new heights in his work. This kind of stretch is essential for the growing, changing, effective patrolman. In the following scene, the sergeant has some pretty high expectations. Watch.
Well, this report, it's good. You got some good information on that suspect.
Yeah, the guy's wearing a trench coat with some red paint on the right sleeve.
That's good. You got his nickname, too, I see.
Yeah, he's called Corky, and his girl works at the Astro Bar.
Okay. You got some good leads to go on. Now, the Dicks are pretty busy with major crimes to go and follow this one up. It'll be cold before they get to it. I want you to have this man in jail by shift change tomorrow night.
What? Are you kidding? That's impossible.
Far from it. I expect to have Corky at headquarters in 24 hours. Check your watch. I'll see you later.
The sergeant expects a lot, doesn't he? Setting high expectations, you see, begins with ourselves. Sergeant Turner has committed himself to being a first-rate professional at his job. He'll settle for nothing less. In doing so, he fixes an example of excellence for his men to follow. He can then expect that same degree of hard work and loyalty from his men. Don't expect second-rate work from your patrolmen, and don't accept it. What you look for is what you get. If you expect the worst from your men, you will get it. And if you expect the best, you will get that. You do a man a favor when you require his best. It shows that you respect him, that you believe in his competence. Ignoring an officer's real and potential abilities by settling for second-rate work can destroy a patrolman's dignity, his confidence, drive, and potential. A patrolman may gripe when he receives an order to achieve more than he thinks he can do, but after he's had a successful, stretching experience, he has more confidence in himself. As his supervisor, you've shown you cared about his development and given him reason to value your judgment and leadership. Sergeants are often tempted to be answer men for the men in their squad. It's an easy trap to fall into because it takes less time at the outset to answer a question than to help a man come up with an answer himself. But sometimes in an emergency, there's no recourse other than to tell a man what to do, to stop him from making a mistake. But the process of thinking things through is an exercise that builds mental muscle in the patrolman. It's training for a sergeant, too. It means that he has to come up with penetrating questions instead of simple answers. Counsel your men. Don't just advise them. Advising, you see, is telling another person what to do. But counseling is enabling him to see for himself what he should do, how to do it, and why he should do it.
He took it. I guess he thought my back was turned.
All right, what's your name?
Randy McDonald.
Randy McDonald? You know, Randy, you've been accused of shoplifting. Now, I want you to listen to something. This is very important. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. You have the right to talk to a lawyer and have him present with you while you're being questioned. Now, if you cannot afford a lawyer, one will be appointed to represent you before any questioning. Now, do you understand that?
Yes, sir.
Officer, I saw him pick up this motor and slip it under his jacket, just as slick as you please.
Would you like to tell your side of this, Randy?
I don't know why I did it. I've never done it before. Please, officer, don't call my parents. Just let me pay for it.
Shoplifting's a crime, Randy, and a very serious one. Now, I want you to wait right here a minute, please. Excuse me. Well, what do you think I should do?
Well, what are your alternatives?
Well, I could call his parents and have him come down to the jail and pick him up. Or I could have him come down here to the store and issue him a juvenile appearance card. Or I could maybe just talk to his folks and maybe a good stiff lecture would be sufficient for the boy.
What do you think is best?
Well, I can decide that better after I talk with his parents. If they seem responsible, like they can handle it, then I think maybe just a good talking to will be enough. But if they shrug it off, then I think a juvenile court appearance is going to be necessary. You know, he seems real sorry that he did it. In fact, he even offered to pay for it. Now, that's not a bad idea.
What would be gained by that?
Well, nothing, probably. Might just start him thinking that he can buy his way out of trouble. Well, Randy, I'm going to call your parents now.
Please, officer. Here's the money for it.
Now, you can't buy that motor, Randy, but you do owe something to your parents. Now, how are you going to pay back 14 years of trust?
You see, several skilled questions from Sergeant Turner enabled the patrolman to use his own knowledge. Tom had the information to solve the problem, but he didn't know how to use it. Now, the answer man supervisor insults his subordinates. He makes them feel inferior, that they are stupid and must rely on his wisdom for the right results. The supervisor who gives the opportunity to his men to solve problems for themselves is a builder, a developer of men.
To summarize, he does it by building on strengths, by positive listening, by knowing the whole man, by counseling, not advising, by knowing the goal, by knowing his role, and by having high expectations.
Sergeant Turner's squad responds to him because they're ordered to, yes. But they respond on a high level because they respect him, believe in him, in his integrity and judgment. A successful leader does not get behind his men and push. He leads by example. Leadership doesn't just happen when a sergeant sews the stripes on his uniform. Leadership develops and grows. It's a spark that becomes a fire.
Hey, Sarge, I did it. Check your watch. 24 hours and Corky's in jail.
I know you could do it, Bill.
But listen, it was just a coincidence. Just a lucky break that I caught that guy. I mean, that was really an impossible assignment.
And you achieved the impossible, huh? Luck helps. But that thorough search you made helped you recognize that break and then take advantage of it.
Sarge, you're tough.
Correction. I'm tough-minded.
302's the only one in service. I've got a disturbance. 2616 Dewey Avenue. Will you be able to make that with it?